Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Dawn of Rebellion podcast. This is coming to you from currently sunny Cornwall, but who knows, it can change on a dime. This podcast is all about the stuff that's going on in the southwest, as well as our general thoughts on what's going on in the world of gaming, both on the tabletop and in the realm of RPGs. The aim of this podcast is for us to have a little bit of fun and to express our personal thoughts and feelings on what is going on in the world of gaming. We are by no means competitive, we are by no means experts, but we like what we do, and we hope you enjoy some of the things we have to say. On tonight's episode, we have an interview with Brandon, who is the senior editor at Winged Hussar Publishing, and a chat with a good friend of mine, Mark, who is from our local gaming club. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to our very first segment, which is talking about Necromunda. Our club has been running a Necromunda campaign for a while now. I was very sceptical of the game at first, but having been bullied into it by Finn, I feel that I made a very wise choice in getting involved in this absolutely fantastic game. So here's myself and Mark talking about our campaign and our thoughts on the game. I'm joined today by Mark, who is a good friend of mine from our local geek club. Say hello, Mark.
Hello.
Good, thanks for that.
And so that was my intro.
Doesn't need to be any flashier than that. Oh,
yeah.
Yeah. So at the club, we have been playing lots of Necromunda, the Underhive edition. I've got an Escher gang, and what's yours, Mark?
I've got Van Saar, the original miniatures from the 90s with the mullets.
Yes, they are quite retro. Have you found it then? We've been running the campaign for... Finn's been running it for, 8 weeks now? 8-9 weeks?
Yeah, I think it says a lot that, kind of at the club, you tend to cycle through games and you'll do 2 or 3 weeks or something, months tops. And yet with this one, without swapping to anything else, and the interest levels have been maintained throughout, and I think that says a lot about the game.
Yeah.
It's good, and it's appealing to a lot of people who are coming from different areas. We've got people who are playing fantasy, sci-fi, historics, at different scales, all sorts of stuff, and everyone's been captivated by it, which I think is a pretty good advert for it, really.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't play it at all, first edition, and even when they re-released it back in November, I was at Warhammer World in February, and I saw it and thought, not particularly interested. And then Finn didn't shut up about it, and I thought, okay, fine, we'll try it, and it's been brilliant. Yeah, it took us a while to kind of work out some of the rules, even though they are pretty straightforward. We were getting a lot of them wrong, but I think now we've got the hang of it. You can rattle through a game reasonably quickly.
Yeah, and particularly given the format of the game, that you can have stuff where it is just literally turn up with 2 guys each, and so. You get some games where they say, you can have a game done in half an hour, and you can't really. Whereas this, you very much can. If you just set up a simple board and take a couple of guys each, and there are scenarios which cater for that without making any compromise. Yeah. And it works really well. So yeah, it's cracking. Yeah,
it's good. Have you had a particular highlight of our campaign thus far?
I think anything which ends up on an open plan board has been my highlight, because you've got kind of the boards which come with the base set, where you're kind of wandering around corridors and caverns and that sort of thing, which favours the close combat gangs. Mine is very much not a close combat gang. So as I was saying the other week, I'm kind of the equivalent of the boring guy who turns up to paintball, finds a hiding place and just sits there blatting away.
Yeah, that is.
So that's kind of one of the best ways to use Van Saar, unfortunately. Yeah. So it's not the most exciting for other people to face. But yeah, it's about getting in cover and just digging in and shooting, because you've got good weapons, quite tanky with good enough armour, and you've got access to good weapons straight from the word go.
What, like that multi-melter that you run on about with? Yeah, I have to say, if we're going to take the paintball analogy, now you've been at it for a while and you've bought some very good guns, you're not so much paintballing as just hurling tins of Dulux paint around.
Yeah, it's getting silly. And I think there's some all of the weapons by and large, there's sort of top end stuff is what anyone who's played 40k is going to be familiar with. So there's less of a transition, and that you're not going to have to get your head around new weapons and work out what does what. Some stuff, because of the scale of the action, means things like bolters, where there's a standard sidearm in 40k. In Necromunda, they're obviously something a bit more special, and they've got their own pitfalls as well, which I'm sure you'd be able to go into.
Oh, what, the ammo check being quite high.
Access to stuff like multi-melters and stuff from the word go just means if you can get within half range of someone, you're almost at the point where if you roll 2 2+s in a row, you're taking people off the table, which again is a lot harder than this compared to 40k.
Yeah. Yes. As an Escher player, where my only heavy weapon I can start with is a heavy stubber. And I gave it to a champion, and she has done nothing with it in 8 or 9 weeks. To the point where I kind of hope she doesn't get drawn out of the deck when we pick our gangers, because she's just crap.
Yeah, the setup of the gang might be worth for anyone who hasn't played it. Might be worth going to, because I think that's one of the instrumental things of what changes this game compared to stuff like 40k, which at first glance aesthetically might look similar to.
Yeah.
So it's possibly worth having a chat about.
Yeah. Okay. So. It does depend on what kind of campaign the Arbiter wants to run, but generally speaking, you start with 1,000 credits, and then each gang has a list, like a war chest or an equipment list that they can choose from their house gang list, and you have to have a gang leader, and then you can have up to 2 champions, and then as long as those, you then buy your gangers, and then you can buy Juves, which are how would you describe Juves? They're teenagers, basically, aren't they?
Yeah. They're young, up-and-coming wannabe gangers who haven't quite blooded and proved themselves yet. So, yeah, teenage, aspiring gangers.
Yeah. And Juves, leaders and champions, all gain experience, which can be used to improve stats. So you bank up experience, and then you go, I want to improve my weapon skill or my extra movement or whatever. Whereas general gangers, once they get 6 experience points, you roll on a table, and they might become a specialist, or they might, nothing happens. So you can't really rely on them developing. But your champions, leaders, and Juves can't equal more than half the total number of models in the gang. So if you've got 5 gangers, you can have 5 combination of leader, champion, and Juve to make a list of 10.
Correct me if I'm wrong, because it might just be a gang-specific thing, but when it comes to heavy weapons, it is just the gang champions who can use them. Jews are very restricted in that they can't even use kind of standard auto guns and blasts and stuff. They're pistols and close combat weapons by and large. And even then, there's a credit limit on that. So if it's a proper top-end pistol,
it's like 50 credits, isn't it?
Yeah. Is it just on credits? So I don't know, it might just be a model thing, because I've got the first edition models and they've all just got pistols and knives and stuff.
Yeah, I don't know whether I don't think there's a rarity limit to it. So if anything you can get off your gang list, you can have as many of as you like. You can buy them whenever, and then there's a trading post, which is like Amazon, I guess, or Asda.
Yeah.
More probably more like Asda in the States, where you can turn up and or Walmart and just I want to buy some apples. Oh, and an AK-47. You go, oh great. So, but they have rarity. So, like a bolter has got a higher rarity than a las gun, and then a multi-melter is even rarer, and all this sort of stuff. So, I don't think they have any limitations on the rarity of stuff. But because Jews, by and large, are crap.
Now it's on Jews. It says it is pistols and close combat weapons is all they can use in terms of weaponry, not war gear. And for the gang I've been using, they're limited to nothing worth more than 20 credits, and that is pretty limiting. So any pistol with a bit of punch on it, you're not going to be able to give to a Jew.
Yeah, you're not getting a bolt pistol for 20 credits, are you?
One of the main differences between first edition and the current edition is the makeup of the gang. The fact that you used to just have your leader, a heavy, and then your gangers and Jews, whereas now the whole idea of having champions, which you're limited in the number you can take, and the champions take the heavy weapons by and large. But if you don't want to go along that route with your gang, you can go full sort of close assault with your champions instead, and gear their skills and equipment towards that. So I think it's more of a flexible game, and the way that you evolve your gang is a lot better than first edition as well. Instead of just sort of generic rules, there's stuff which is very gang specific in terms of the skill advances and the access to equipment they have and the equipment they're skilled to use.
Yeah,
so
I think
the whole thing is slicker.
the skill set trees that you can get. So I think I've got athleticism or athletics or whatever it's called as one of mine, and being able to really give your gang a bit of flavour is really good, because you get 2 trees as well, so no 2 Escher gangs are necessarily going to be the same, or no 2 Van Saars. How did you kit out your you not so much about gangers and Jews, but how did you kit out your leader and champions at the start?
To kick off with the leader, I just went with what was on the model effectively, and that it was a plasma pistol and close combat weapon. So I went with that. But back when I was in my teens, I'd glued a Space Marines bolt gun onto his back, and I could get that for him quite quickly. I think it was only after one game with some lucky dice roll in the inter-game tables, I managed to get that as well. The champions is a bit different, and there is a little bit of a difference with first edition, in that Van Saar, they've all got sort of auto guns and las guns, and actually Van Saar, you've got to start with las guns, las carbines, and various sort of slight variations on a theme. Yeah. So there's a lot of the kit which is on the first edition Van Saar models which you can't take as a starter. So the heavy, which came with the original box set, has got a heavy stubber, and that's not one of your options. Yeah. So which comes to the sordid subject of what you see is what you get, which I know everyone who's into gaming will have a slight variation. You can go from the extreme of, some people will say it has to be absolutely rigid. The model has what the model has, whereas you go to the other end of the spectrum, which is as long as you've had a discussion, the game kicks off and people know what represents what. Yeah. Then you go with that, and I think we've got a mixture, haven't we? In the tournament we've got, I know one of the guys is very much, he doesn't like to enforce it on other people, but for him, what you see is what you get. That's what he wants for his gang, and that's fine. For me, by and large, I've done that, but I figure if I've got a gang which on eBay is probably worth about 30 quid, and they are official licensed models, I feel a bit seen off that I would have to start cutting bits off them or selling them to replace with new ones. I just have that conversation beforehand and say, look, this big heavy stuff is actually a multi-Nelson. So, yeah. Right, but better that than spending 10 quid on a guy. Yeah, I mean, to make it work.
My own sort of 2 cents on that is, I think if you're doing club level, informal, around your mate's house, I think as long as you go, oh yeah, he's got this, this and this, that's fine. But I kind of feel that if you were to go to a proper tournament, say at Warhammer World or at Adepticon or something like that, I think they would be within their rights to say it must, what's on the model needs to be modelled and demonstrated. But I think in a friendly situation.
Reasons for that. One is if you're doing quickfire table to table, and this is coming from a guy who has literally never played a tournament, so I'm not talking out of my proverbial. But if you're going quickfire table to table, you don't really want to be saying, having any confusion. It should just be, well, I can see an enemy unit, I know what it's got, and you deal with it. And another one is that if you are at Warhammer World or somewhere like that, at the end of the day, it's a profit-making organisation. They want to push their models, and that's absolutely fine. That's how these companies move ahead. And if they want to say, look, they want everything absolutely prim and proper and using the correct models from their ranges in the correct style, then that's the way the company's geared out, and that makes sense. But I also agree with what you said, that if you're just getting together with a couple of mates and a couple of drinks, then it isn't time for prison rules. In my mind, I think as long as you just say, look, this represents this represents that, I don't really want to spend 20 quid on eBay for one model in one evening. No.
Leader's got a plasma pistol and a chainsword, which was a mistake. The chainsword was an error. I should have given her a stiletto sword instead, because toxin is better than rending in terms of actually killing people. But the chainsword model is very cool from the Forge World pack. So it was rule of cool rather than this will be meta.
And again, that to me is infinitely more valid. I know certainly from having played and done a lot of stuff with bolt action. Bolt action is one of those games where you can sit down with a calculator and work out the percentage chance of drawing a decent success from every point you spend. Yeah. And you can really do that whole metagaming thing. But sometimes it's cooler to just turn up with a King Tiger, even though it is a complete waste of points it looks really cool, and that's where the fun is.
Yeah.
And I think again, Necromunda, there's quite an element of that. There's some stuff which is the obvious go-to choice, but some stuff just looks cooler or is funnier, and it's just more fun to do, really.
So you've got Van Sar. Have you got your eye on a second gang?
Propped in second gang, which I know if the Warhammer police were to find out about, that would be I'd be in a whole world of trouble. But how many players have we got on our? Is it 6 gangs we've got going? I think it's 6, not 6.
Two Escher.
You know what? I'll go with that as well. So I've proxied in an Escher gang, which is made of various miniatures from just sort of tucked away in corners of other box sets, and also Warlord Games do a zombie hunting game, which has got a box set called Female Survivors. So there's a male survivor and a female survivor box, and so it's quite good in that instead of having a Juve who's kind of kind of cool in their mid to late teens, the Juve equivalent in this box set is a 6-year-old girl, Mac 10 submachine gun and an army helmet on, which I thought was a bit more comical. And the models are just, I think, quite diverse in what they are. Although, again, the purists wouldn't like it because it's all 21st century weapons. It's M16 and AK-47 assault rifles. And RPG-7 shoulder-mounted launchers, stuff like that. But I think, again, for what we were saying earlier, just messing around at a club, I think people will hopefully just see the funny side that the models are slightly more humorous. Have you got your eye on a second gang at all? I know you already have a second gang anyway, but is there a second gang you're going to use?
Yeah, I've got the Goliaths from the starter set, and I've painted half of them, but I don't, because we've got 2 Goliath gangs already, I don't really want to go down that road. I do like the Orlok models. I think they're really cool. But fluff-wise, I'm waiting for Delac, which are the sneaky, stealthy spies. But the models have got to be right, I think. Lore is important, but I think the models have to be appealing. I really like the new Van Sar kit. I think they look brilliant. And I'm going to steal some for some in 30k. I've got an Ultramarines army, and one of the options is for the Inductari, who are people who didn't quite make it as Space Marines. They didn't quite get through all the training, but they had some of the enhancements, and you can use them as like an auxiliary force. And I think they would look really cool as that. But again, we've got 2, when John turns up anyway, 2 Van Sar gangs. So I think it would be Orlok or Delac, depending on what the Delac kit looks like when that comes out, November-ish, I guess.
No, it'd be interesting to see. I mean, I know we had that conversation about the new Van Sar gang, and the main reason I didn't go for it was I've got the old gang. Yeah. So why buy a second gang of exactly the same thing? If I was going to buy a new box set, I'd probably go for something completely different.
So yeah, Necromunda, good game. If you haven't tried it, get involved. I think actually the starter set, I mean, all the GW starter sets they've brought out recently are very good. But I think with that one, it really is a game in a box, because you get the board, the scenery, the dice, the rule book. You don't get the campaign bit, that's our big issue with the game at the moment, is that the rules are all over the place in all the different, there's a little bit here in that supplement, a little bit there in that supplement. So we're all hoping that when they've got the 6 gangs out, so it will be Gang War 5, I think will be the Delac book. They will do some sort of compendium where they go, here is the campaign book with all the scenarios and all the campaign rules.
Yeah.
And even, hopefully, here is an army book with all the gang lists in it. That would be brilliant.
Yeah, because every time the new Gang War books are coming out, there's like, well, here's, for example, Gang War 3. For me, I got that because it's got all the Van Sar stuff in, but it's still then got, here's what's changed for Escher and Orlok, etc. since the last books. So you're sort of slightly disadvantaged maybe if you've got one of your gangs in an earlier book and then you don't buy the later books.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's a tiny disadvantage. I think it's nothing huge.
Yeah. But yeah. So small issue, but hopefully I'm sure they'll come up with something. They did it with the red books in 30k.
Do we know what the next releases are and what's coming out in Gang War 4 and what the next gang?
Gang War 4 is I don't know how you pronounce it, Cawdor or Cawdor or however it's pronounced. They're the foraging fanatics, but they have developed the campaign system. That's the other kind of half of the book, and I was listening to. They were on Warhammer TV and they were talking about how. Whereas in the Gang War 3 campaign system, you have one piece of territory, like the actual setting itself isn't really that important. With this one, it was you have like a grid with however many territories on there, and literally you take it in turns. Go, I want that one, I want that one, I want that one. And if two people choose the same one, you fight over it, and the winner gets the piece of territory. And then the next kind of week, someone says, I want to try and get that piece of territory, so I'm going to fight the person defending that. And there's a bit more of a visual, almost sort of tactile aspect to the campaign as opposed to just...
It's telling more of a story, it seems, really.
Yeah.
Rather than just a random roll of a dice and let's see what we're doing this week.
Exactly. So I think that's cool. I'd started kind of thinking about that, but it was just going to be... I had a feeling they'd do something, and it was just too much trouble to do that on my own. Cool. So yeah, that's Necromunda. I'm sure we'll come back to it as the campaign's kind of on a pause for a few weeks now. Who won in the end? Who had the highest gang rating? Can you remember? Was it you?
No. I think I was, second or third. I know in the last game, Pete, who I've never seen a man with such an ability to roll so many ones.
It is incredible, isn't it?
Yeah, if anyone listening can send in any suggestions of games where you need to consistently roll ones for victory, then please do let us know, and Pete will just be unstoppable.
Yeah, I mean, we everyone has one of these friends, but this is genuinely ridiculous. Anytime Pete needs to roll anything other than a 1, he will roll a 1, and it's almost without fail. You could bank money on it, couldn't it?
Yeah, he never loses his patience over it. It's amazing.
Well, I think it's been going on for 30 years now, so he's just got used to it.
Yeah, but I think that last game, he brought it out of the bag, and all the 5s and 6s were coming out. But again, I think that's worth stressing. That was Necromunda. It isn't all down to luck. There's some games a lot more than others where luck with the dice is more rewarding than actually thinking your way through. You can come up with an amazing game plan, and then just be absolutely slaughtered just because of bad luck. And there's always going to be an element of that.
Yeah.
But I think Necromunda does reward thinking your way through things a little bit better. It's not all dice dependent, but I think the fortunes can swing really quickly in it. And with Necromunda, you can play a game where by turn 2 you think, wow, this has been an absolute disaster. I've been massacred in the opening turns, and then you can still win.
Yeah.
Because of how hard it is to remove an enemy model from the board. It is really difficult to do that.
Yeah, one sec. Hang on. Yeah, right. Okay, cool. So, any more thoughts on Necromunda before we take a break?
No, I would just echo your thoughts, really, of if it's a thing you've looked at, know it exists, and thought, nah, not for me. For the sake of one box set for a gang, which is all it takes, to kind of buy your way in, I would really give it a go. It's really good.
Cool, excellent. Right, we'll have a quick break and then we will come back.
Attention citizens, this is a public service announcement. Do not be alarmed.
Our club recently attended Geekfest 4.0, which is Cornwall's version of Comic Con. It's an interesting experience. I'm not one who's been to conventions before, so I went last year. It was a bit of an eye-opening experience. But at both years we have run a charity raffle raising money for Little Harbour, which is a children's hospice located in St Austell, which is just up from the road from us. And we couldn't have done it without the help of various third-party sellers. A huge thanks goes out to Alchemist Workshops, who provided us with our main prize this year. That was a copy of Age of Sigmar Soul Wars, very generous of them. Big shout out also goes to Element Games, who provided our runner-up prize, a copy of Rune Wars by Fantasy Flight Games. We raised over £200, which doesn't sound like much, but for a local convention for half a day, it was pretty good going. Thank you all those who bought tickets online, much appreciated, and all the money went to a very, very good cause. We're hoping to make a bit of a bigger deal out of it next year, and who knows, if this podcast takes off, maybe we can do some more good that way. I have a small confession to make about this upcoming segment. I recorded this interview quite a while ago when I first had the idea for this podcast, and it's taken me this long to get around to doing it. So it does talk about events in the past, and it was actually quite lengthy, so we've split it up into two sections. This first half will be this episode, and then the second half will either be in episode 2 or episode 3, depending on how much of the stuff we have to fill it. Anyway, I hope you enjoy. Alright, so welcome to the podcast. This is our first interview, and we've got Brandon from Wing Hussar Publishing. Hi Brandon.
Hello, glad to be here.
Cool. So yeah, could you tell us a bit about what you do, what your link to kind of the hobby is, and what your company's all about?
Alright, so I am the lead editor for a company called Winged Hussar Publishing. We have two branches. The Winged Hussar Publishing branch deals with a lot of history works and we do a lot of history novels that have fallen out of print, and we re-up them with new information and colored maps and those type of things. So like one of our first works that we did was Caesar's Gaelic Wars, and we took the copy that had fallen out of print. We took new information, we re-edited it with the best translations possible, put in colored maps and detailed appendices, and that's kind of like what the history branch does. The other half of our company is titled Zmok Books, ZMOK, and that deals with science fiction and fantasy. So we have a wide range of different things that we do, but one of our core aspects is that we do a lot of the tie-in fiction for the different tabletop games. So we provide the background novels for games such as Wild West Exodus, All Quiet on the Martian Front, Beyond the Gates of Antares, and most recently we've acquired rights to do work with Mantic's world. So that includes Kings of War, Dreadball, Warpath, etc. We have a couple other things that are in the works right now. We're just waiting for comebacks on those, and we're always looking to expand our reach and our range of novels that we do.
Awesome. How long has the company been involved in the gaming side? I know you talked about the history side, but how long have you been doing the kind of background narrative stuff?
Pretty much almost since our inception, we've been working with tabletop games. My dad is the founder of the company, and before he started this company, he worked 20 years in Black Library as head of sales for the U.S., and he kind of really helped to promote that company to where it is. So he kind of has the knowledge of how the industry works, so he started by approaching the gentleman that owned Wild West Exodus at the time, and they were talking about wanting to do novels for their game because they had done this was about 5 years ago. They had done little snippets of information inside the rule book, and they're like, we're looking for somebody to edit the rule book and make sure that the stories look good. And then from there, they talked about wanting to do novels to go with those stories. So we started off by originally doing Wild West Exodus novels, and then we did a trilogy. That game is very much centered around heroes, so we did a lot of hero-based novels such as the Jesse James trilogy. And then we focus on a couple of the different factions. And one of the big things we try to do with all of our gaming works is we try to lead off with an anthology, so that way you get a collection of stories based off of all the different factions through different viewpoints from different writers.
Yeah, so you get that kind of, as you say, overview of and get a feel for the universe before it gets kind of forced down one particular author's kind of vision.
Exactly. Yeah, we try to we want to make it. The big thing about these novels is we want to try to help sell the miniatures and give the fans something that they can recreate. We want them to be able to read a novel and go, wow, that was really cool. I want to buy the faction that's associated with that, and be able to recreate that with my friends.
Yeah.
So like with the anthologies, the latest one we did was we did 2 anthologies for Beyond the Gates of Antares, and like I said, we tried to just do we had an open submission for that one, so fans could submit their stories, and I went through and picked which ones were like the top quality ones, which ones we could work with, and there was an overwhelming number of submissions that we got for that. But I tried to tailor it so that way we didn't have too many stories based off of one faction.
Yeah.
And a lot of the stories that we received were based on the Freeborn faction, and that's because they're like the most neutral of the different parties. You can do so much more with them because they're not confined to so many of the different rules in the universe. So I went specifically out looking for different stories that would tell about those factions that were a little bit more confined. And actually that's how I was introduced to our mutual friend Mark Barber, is because his story kind of took the element of the Concord, who is very much based off of computerized, like technological standpoints, where everything is kind of controlled by the technology that they're bound with.
Yeah.
He kind of put a different viewpoint on it of what it would like, what the military life is like, since they have a little bit more free thought and free range of action, being able to think on the go because they're needed to in combat.
Yeah.
And that was sort of one of the things that drew me, is like, wow, he took the concepts that are kind of mentioned in the rule book, but they're not really centralized around. And he ran with it to make a story that made it feel very human and, still keeping to those concepts of being integrated with the technology. And those are the stories that I tried to look for, is stories that told a whole story about the faction while still highlighting all the key details.
Yeah. I mean, I know I read loads of sci-fi books. I'm wading through the Horus Heresy. I've made it a pledge to read them all in order. And the best books are the ones that don't just... It's not just like a snapshot of a game that I could play on the table. It's that it's the stuff that goes on in the background that you can't replicate in a game, but then fleshes out the game when you're playing it yourself. They're the stories that really going to grab you the most.
Definitely. It's an interesting... With the different universes we've worked with, it's interesting to see how the world itself expands. Like in Wild West Exodus, we're kind of constrained to the United States, so there was only so much like movement and development we could do with keeping things all tied to the central one continent. While you have Beyond the Gates of Antares, that everything, the universe, there's no limit to it. You just can go everywhere you want. And there's none of these stories have to be tied together because the universe is just so big that you can have 7,000 stories and none of them interlock with each other.
Yeah.
And then you get Kings of War, which is centralized around one particular continent, but we've gotten the okay from Mantic to actually spread out beyond that continent and tease different locations beyond what they've revealed. So it's interesting how different game systems are all set up to have different backgrounds, some being wide and diverse and some being small and constrained, but you can still have engaging, interesting stories in all of them.
Yeah. Having spoken with Brandon about his work with Mantic Games, it felt appropriate that we speak to Mark, who is working with Mantic to help create the first novel, or one of the first novels, based in the Kings of War universe. So we join the conversation now as it turns to his upcoming novels. Cool. So, in amongst other things, you're doing some creative work with Mantic. Is that right?
Indirectly, yeah. I'm signed up with Winged Hussar Publishing, who are a publishing company in the States who are representing quite a lot of different IPs. So I guess for anyone who hasn't heard of them, an easy way of looking at WHP is, whereas Black Library are doing all of the game Games Workshop stuff, or as it is now, Warhammer stuff. For a lot of the other companies who don't have their own in-house publishers for lore, that's where Winged Star Publishing come in. So they represent a whole load of companies from Mantic to Warlord to a few others, All Quiet on the Martian Front, and there is a Wild West Exodus as well. There's a whole load of stuff Winged Star are doing.
Yeah. Cool. So Mantic they do lots of different games, but you're focusing on Kings of War, which is their fantasy landscape one, isn't it?
Mantic are one of the several companies who are they're an offshoot of old GW, and that a lot of their guys who set them up are ex-GW guys. So Mantic came in, I believe initially it was more about about producing the miniatures, and then their own range of games came a little bit later. Kings of War is a standard 20 scale for, I don't mean 28mm, do I? What do I mean? It was 1 in 56, is it 28mm? No, it's 28mm. I'm sure we can edit that out. I'll just start talking again and we'll get rid of that bit, hopefully.
No, it's fine. I'm pretty sure it's 28mm.
Standard 28mm scale fantasy tabletop war game where they do have a sort of equivalent dungeon crawler kind of thing, a la Hero Quest, Warhammer Quest sort of thing, which is set in the same world. But Kings of War is one of their flagship products, which is just growing in popularity, really. I mean, in terms of what's out there at the moment, there's Age of Sigmar, there's Warhammer Fantasy Battle is still going, I believe, just sort of more unofficially.
Completely unofficially, yeah.
Sorry?
Completely unofficially.
Yeah, it's in 9th edition, but it's still got quite a following. It's doing pretty well. There's Kings of War, and there's Rune Wars from FFG. So there's still quite a few of these large-scale fantasy battle, Tolkien-esque, which obviously brings us back to the original-ish as well of Lord of the Rings, the tabletop game, which is more skirmishy. There's a whole load of them which are kind of rivaling in the same sort of area, and Kings of War is definitely one of the more popular ones.
Yeah, it looks good, and they've had a big summer campaign this time round. They've just had a short story compendium come out, where I think the ebook's out, but I don't think the paper copy's out yet. It's probably be out by the time I've got around to editing this. It's due at some point in August, I think. But you're doing a proper novel for them.
Off the back of working with WHP before, I did a short story with Warlord, with Gates and Antares, which then led on to a novel. I was still working on that novel when the opportunity came to do the Kings of War, the first compilation of short stories. So I just couldn't fit that in. But there was then this opportunity to go into another novel, which is a tricky thing to do in a lot of ways. Who's done writing? First off, my background is mainly non-fiction. In sort of Second World War military history, and then I went into writing for Warlord with Bolt Action, and did 3 campaign books. Then if you go on to saying, right, I'm now doing sci-fi and fantasy novels, that is a completely different skill set. It's pretty challenging. And as anyone listening who is more interested in the lore side of things and the fluff behind whatever game systems they play, you're kind of holding something sacred to a lot of people, and you really don't want to make a mistake.
But equally on that note, it's I think with people can be very precious about lore, and any lore that they don't personally agree with is bad lore. I don't think that's necessarily the right attitude. I think you can be passionate about things, but equally a bit of perspective is necessary sometimes. You go, yeah, but it is just made up stories, lad. Calm down.
Yeah. I think for us that are tinkering away with the Kings of War fluff and lore stuff at the moment, we're cognizant that there's people who are really interested. There's people who think that this is a long overdue thing, that this is a gaming system which has been around for years now, and there is a bit of stuff in the rule book and the campaign books, but people do want to see a lot more. Yeah,
it's not. It's very, from what I've seen, it seems very suggestive. It refers to things but doesn't actually develop them. So you get a rough idea of stuff is happening, but there isn't much in the way of specifics of actually this is what happened. These are these people. These are the ones involved. And I think having the short story compendium and then hopefully a string of novels will help kind of build that universe, because it is still, I know you said this, the game system's been around for a while, but the actual lore is still in its infancy compared to, as you say, when it's only been around a couple of years, how much can there be, sort of thing.
Yeah, definitely. I totally agree with that. I think in terms of, again, what's in the second edition a rule book, which there's two versions of. There's one which is here's the rules, off you go, and there's one which has got some of the lore in there. It's quite Old Testament in a way, in that it's kind of centuries ago, here's how the world evolved. It goes into I wouldn't say mythology, because this is sort of taken on at face value that the gods of this setting are very much kind of involved, and there's categoric proof they exist. So it's not mythology in that respect, but it tells you about how they came into being, and therefore how the world was shaped, and that the antagonists, the bad guys, which is the abyss. There's an event which causes the abyssal scar, this huge rift across which is kind of in the northeast of the map, where all the bad guys spew out of, which has got it's kind of 7 layers. It's very Dante-esque. It's 7 layers of hell kind of thing. Yeah. And that's kind of where it's that's the basis of the good versus evil struggle. But again, it is very classical Tolkien kind of fantasy, which I really like about it. Now, I know that sort of setting may draw its critics, where people say, well, okay, that's not a very original way of looking at it, but I think
it ain't broke.
Yeah, totally. I think that's a really good thing. I remember reading a novel going back a few years which tried to put a different slant, where the humans are the bad guys, the orcs are the good guys. The orcs are really intelligent, the humans are quite thuggish, and I really didn't like it. It really didn't work, because it's like all you've really done is take humans and orcs and swap their skin colour over and just write a conventional fantasy novel. Yeah. Whereas this is, it is what it is. You look at the artwork, it looks, it has a lot of echoes of the original Warhammer Fantasy Battle, of the Tolkien world, and it's not trying to shy away from that. It does have its own individual flair. The main human faction's got a real kind of Byzantine feel,
which is different, isn't it, as opposed to the kind of medieval Europe that most fantasy systems have.
Yeah, totally. Instead of here's your classic Western European medieval knight as your figurehead, it's very different. It's the main good guy faction, the Cilia. They feel more to me about ancient Greece or the Roman Empire had survived more intact and hadn't had the external influences either absorb them or rip them apart and form them into something new. If they had stayed in that same aesthetic and made it through to the 1400s, this is what they'd look like. Yeah. It is a different way of doing it, I think.
No, it's good. I mean, I haven't given it a go yet, but I've got Dark Elves, which are equivalent, I think they call them the Twilight Kin. And once I've got 1,500 points or so painted up, so we'll just have to have a game at some point and we can chat about it.
Yeah, it's a really simple system, I think, is one of its strengths. So anyone who's played any other sci-fi fantasy tabletop game will get into it really quickly. Yeah. There's some systems out there which can be very complex until you get your head around it, and then they run on rails. Rune Wars, the FFG one, Having played that recently, I think that's one example of, I think once you get your head around it, it's going to be slick, but it isn't straight from the word go. To first look at it, it is complicated. Kings of War very much is not. It is really simple. So if anyone has got any old dungeon crawler game they've played and a load of orcs in a corner or anything at all, you can just cobble them together, stick them in some units, and you can be playing by just downloading the rules from Mantic's website and get straight into it. It is a very simple game.
You don't even need those. You could because it is tray based, isn't it? You could just cut out some bits of paper and write on it, 10-man spearman unit, and push it on that way.
I read a review of Kings of War saying that, and someone who didn't enjoy the game was criticising it, saying it's stronger if you do that. If you would just cut out some bits of rigid cardboard and write on them what your units are, you can play it that way. And the fact that you can do that without the miniatures is less rewarding. And it's always an individual thing, and fair enough, that was that individual's point of view, and that's fine. But for me, it's a simple game, and when you've got all of the miniatures out on the table, it looks spectacular.
Yeah.
And so, you could play with bits of cardboard, but the miniature side of the hobby, you'd be losing out on that. And Mantic's range, I think, are getting stronger. They got a bit of flack for some of the earlier releases, but they seem to be getting much better reviews now on the quality of the miniatures they're putting out.
Yeah, no, it looks good. Definitely something to keep an eye on. Okay, cool. Well, we'll stop there, have a quick break, and then we'll be back, possibly, maybe. We'll see if we've got anything else to talk about. As it turns out, we didn't have a huge amount left to talk about, so we thought we'd wrap this episode up here. Thank you very much for listening, and join us again on the Dawn of Rebellion podcast.